Number 9. Disgruntled doctor opens fire. When violent crimes take place at a hospital, it's rarely at the hands of a doctor, but it does happen occasionally. And in 2017, a 45-year-old doctor named Henry Bello entered the Bronx Lebanon Hospital Center in New York City, armed with an AR-15 and opened fire. The hallways filled with smoke as employees dove beneath desks and ran for cover. Sadly, one doctor was killed and 5 others were seriously injured in the rampage. It was rumored that several of the victims would have likely died if they weren't at a hospital, where life-saving help was readily available. Still, in some situations, employees had to improvise. Reporting for the New York Times, Sarah Maslin-Neer described how witnesses recalled seeing staff members rip a fire hose out of the wall and use it as a tourniquet on one victim. When Bello was finished spraying bullets throughout the emergency room, he lit himself on fire and took his own life. Bello had previously worked at the hospital for around 6 months. He quit amid harassment allegations as an alternative to being fired. The doctor also faced criminal assault charges in an unrelated incident that occurred years earlier, suggesting that perhaps he suffered from underlying mental issues that he never got proper help for. His superiors at the hospital were unaware of his previous convictions during his employment there. For some reason or another, it didn't show up on his record during a background check. Investigators concluded that Bello snuck the AR-15 into the hospital under his lab coat. And while they were initially hesitant to say that they were certain of his motive, it seemed pretty clear that he was disgruntled about how his employment with the hospital had ended. Number 8. New mom loses everything. Tia Shipp was 22 weeks into her pregnancy when she could tell that something was wrong. So she drove to Baptist East Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee in September of 2022. She walked through the doors and went straight to the bathroom, where she prematurely gave birth to a baby boy. Tia's daughter was with her at the time and hit the emergency call button. Staff members rushed in to help, but in the chaos, she left her daughter's purse in the bathroom, along with her wallet and car keys. Before she thought to retrieve them, someone snatched the belongings and stole her car. Sadly, Tia's baby didn't make it, and the last thing she needed was more stress and heartbreak. According to her mother, Tamara Sandridge, who spoke with local station Fox 59, the thief not only made off with her vehicle, but every dollar she had to her name. Sandridge further explained that 9 nurses responded to the emergency call from the hospital bathroom, but not one of them thought to grab Tia's purse. In a statement, the hospital reassured the public that nobody else was injured or in danger, and that the crime didn't interrupt staff members' ability to treat Tia. The hospital also said that the Memphis Police Department was actively investigating the crime, but it's understandable that the situation brought little comfort to Tia and her family, who were left to start over as they were mentally and emotionally processing the loss of her baby. Number 7. A fatally long wait. One evening in June of 2022, a 77-year-old woman went to an emergency room in Wilmington, North Carolina with complaints of fever, vomiting, weakness, and an inability to stand, and a history of cancer. During triage, she was classified as an urgent patient, but staff members sent her back out into the waiting room and told her to sit down. The elderly patient wasn't seen until the next morning, around 5 hours after her vitals were initially taken. Just a few minutes after finally being taken back to her room, the woman coded. Doctors did everything they could to resuscitate her, but she was pronounced dead a few hours later when her family finally made the painful decision to stop all life-saving efforts. When the story broke, a nurse told local station WECT that the hospital wasn't struggling with a bed shortage, but that the facility was extremely understaffed. This resulted in entire hallways being blocked off and remaining unused. Another source told reporters that at one point, the hospital was short around 400 nurses. Following the patient's death, authorities received numerous complaints, and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services launched an investigation. Due to the numerous deficiencies, the facility's Medicare contract was terminated. But the details surrounding the tragedy and whether anyone is at fault for the woman's death remains unclear. According to the last update, the hospital was making changes to get back in good standing with CMS. Number 6. Attempted baby theft. Deputies at the Riverside County Sheriff's Office in Southern California received an unusual call one morning during the summer of 2022 when someone reported that a woman entered a hospital in Moreno Valley posing as a newly hired nurse and tried to steal a newborn baby. The suspect, identified as 23-year-old Jacina Miron, allegedly gained access to a room where a new mom was staying with her baby. Miron then left the hospital with the infant in her possession. Staff members reportedly tried to stop Miron from leaving before they called security. Luckily, the baby's father caught up with her and took the child back, but she managed to flee the scene. Police arrested Miron at her home the following day and charged her with felony kidnapping. Inside her home, they found ultrasounds from 2 other pregnancies. According to Sheriff's Deputy Saul Fernandez, who spoke with the Washington Post, Miron allegedly confessed to posing as a nurse and said that she wanted to be close to a baby. A few weeks after the disturbing incident, the victim's attorney said that Miron spent around 45 minutes in the hospital before running off with the baby. Around 20 minutes of that time was spent in the new mother's room, where Miron reportedly changed the baby's diaper twice. The specific details surrounding the incident, including whether the suspect knew the baby's parents, are unclear. Shortly after Miron's arrest, another new mother came forward and said that a woman claiming to be a nurse offered to take her infant to a medical appointment. Unfortunately, the case is ongoing. Number 5. Accused of infidelity. In a terrifying act of violence that was captured on camera, a 30-year-old parolee named Nestor Hernandez shot 2 healthcare workers dead at a hospital in Dallas in late 2022. The victims, 45-year-old social worker Jacqueline Pokua and 63-year-old nurse Annette Flowers, were innocent bystanders who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Hernandez's girlfriend had just given birth moments earlier. He immediately became angry, thinking she'd cheated on him, and took his anger out on the 2 innocent women who lost their lives. Police shot Hernandez in the leg and took him into custody before he could claim a 3rd victim. According to an arrest warrant, he began acting paranoid about his girlfriend's alleged infidelity shortly before the shooting. He searched her hospital room to make sure nobody was in there, then pulled out a handgun and hit her in the head repeatedly with it. Hernandez placed some disturbing calls and text messages to relatives and told his girlfriend that they were both going to die that day. After that, he opened fire. Hernandez had recently spent 100 days in jail after violating his parole for a previous aggravated robbery conviction by cutting off his ankle monitor. It was his 2nd parole violation, but he did his time for it, and there was no longer any reason to keep him behind bars. Hernandez still had an ankle monitor when the shooting at the hospital occurred, but he had permission to be there. Some have described his alleged crimes as a gross failure of the justice system and have questioned why he was even free in the first place, given the nature of his prior offenses. Number 4. Inmate versus guard. An inmate was being treated in the emergency room at a hospital in Dayton, Ohio one day in 2022 when he overwhelmed an armed guard and stole his gun. He fatally shot the guard and ran out to the parking lot before turning the gun on himself. Police clarified that the guard wasn't a corrections officer overseeing the patient, but an employee of a private security firm that the local sheriff's office had worked with for over 2 decades. Nothing like this had ever happened before. While authorities withheld the names of the inmate and the guard, they revealed that the prisoner was brought to the hospital after complaining that he felt sick. He was in custody on suspicion of a probation violation and that his past offenses consisted of minor drug and traffic-related offenses. In other words, there was no reason to suspect that he might violently lash out and kill someone. Following the tragedy, Montgomery County Sheriff Rob Streck ordered deputies to stay with any inmates who go to the hospital. He reassured the public that it's somewhat unusual for prisoners to only be under the supervision of private guards rather than law enforcement, but he admitted that it depended on the offender's circumstances and history. Number 3. Gunfire at the ER. An emergency room is typically somewhere a person goes when they've been shot, not somewhere where they go and get shot. But the latter is unfortunately known to happen from time to time. During the early morning hours one day in December of 2022, police in the Chicago suburb of Oak Lawn received a call about a large and disruptive gathering outside Advocate Christ Medical Center. Upon arriving, officers overheard a gunshot coming from the direction of a group of people who were gathered near the entrance. They found 28-year-old Brandon McGee on the ground with a bullet wound to his left eye. Doctors attempted to save McGee's life, but he tragically succumbed to his injuries. In the meantime, police identified 36-year-old Marquess Rose as the prime suspect in the case and claimed that they saw him fleeing on foot. They also recovered a revolver at the scene. Rose was out on bond for various other charges at the time of the shooting. He also has 5 felony convictions, including burglaries and gun-related crimes. According to prosecutors, both Rose and the victim attended gatherings that took place somewhere earlier in the evening on the night of the shooting. They've accused the suspect of being among a group of people who followed McGee to the hospital. An argument erupted between the two men, and McGee allegedly shoved Rose to the ground. Even after taking some time to cool off, the pair reportedly went back to fighting with one another, and it ended in deadly gunfire. The case is still under investigation, and Rose is currently being held without bond. Number 2. Complications in Quebec. Usually, when someone is unhappy with what's going on in an emergency room, it's a patient or a patient's loved ones, but it's somewhat rare for an actual doctor to raise the alarm. However, this was exactly what Dr. Sébastien Marin did in October 2022 after a man waited 16 hours for care and died at an ER in Quebec. Marin, who works at Barrie Memorial Hospital in Ormstown, said that the man came to his emergency room hoping for a quicker treatment after waiting 16 hours elsewhere. But within minutes of arriving at Barrie, the man had an aneurysm and died. Speaking with CTV News, Marin said that it was frustrating to know that the patient did what he was supposed to do by seeking help during a medical emergency, only to die right in front of staff members. He further explained that there was no guarantee that the man would have survived if he had received treatment earlier, but that he would have had a much better chance. Marin blamed the problem on overcrowding at local hospitals. In a series of tweets, he described how there was little he could do besides offer his condolences to the patient's family once the aneurysm had done its damage. At the time the man sought treatment, 6 out of 8 hospitals in the region were over capacity, and at least one hospital was at double capacity. The situation left Marin and others feeling understandably frustrated. Patients with treatable conditions were risking their lives by no fault of their own by seeking much-needed medical care. However, they had no choice but to wait longer than they should have to for life-saving treatment. Marin said that he hoped his tweets helped raise awareness that could lead to change within the struggling healthcare system. And at number 1, failed escape. In late 2022, 36-year-old inmate Joshua Leon Wright was transported from a jail in Hays County, Texas, to a local hospital for medical treatment. During his time there, he allegedly assaulted the corrections officer overseeing him and ran out into the hallway. The officer opened fire on Wright, and doctors quickly began to perform life-saving measures. Unfortunately, Wright died from his injuries. It's unclear whether Wright was armed or if he posed a threat to the officer or anyone else at the hospital. Rumors quickly began to circulate regarding the incident, some saying that Wright's feet were shackled or that he was shot in the back multiple times, while others claimed that the officer had a taser but didn't use it. To understand what's true and what's not, investigators will have to take a closer look at the situation and sift through the details one by one. In a statement, Judge Ruben Becerra said that the people of Hays County deserve answers about what happened. The officer who shot Wright was placed on administrative leave, which is customary after any shooting involving an officer. At the moment, the Texas Rangers are actively investigating the incident. Would you rather witness a bizarre emergency room burglary or wait hours on end to receive treatment while suffering from excruciating but non-life-threatening pain? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.